Hello, people. I don't have this thing in my ear, and so when I hit the record button, it gives me a little chime to know it's going. So I don't have the chime. I didn't realize how used to it I got. In any case, that is a side issue. This week, I decided, in honor of Spooktober out here, that I should do something, horror related. So I went with Silence of the Lambs. That's a good one. I This one is a copy from the Kindle Unlimited, but I do own a copy. The thing is, I don't know where it is. Right? It's one of these situations where you move and then you move and you move again, and things just like don't make the trip somehow. I don't know what happened. It's somewhere, but that somewhere's not anywhere I know. Okay. I think I'm trying to think. First time I read this, I think like my mom gave it to me and said, I think she thought it was a different book. Right? There's one old movie with Sally Field in it where she like has multiple personalities. I think my mom thought it was a multiple personality book about that whatever that case was. And then it's like it's 100% not, but it's still very good. So, that's sort of my history with the book. Again, I decided to reread it here, which inadvertent a little bit. You get started and then you just sort of finish it. It's a very easy to read book. My rating is going to be a 5 out of 5. But hold up. Because there's sort of a large caveat to that 5 out of 5. And it's whether it's you or the person you're recommending it to. You got to kind of ask them if they're squeamish or if they don't like crime stories. Now, none of this is true to life. So you have that in your favor. You don't have to say, these things actually happen. But he bases a lot of what happens off of, actual serial killers. So if the person you're talking to or you yourself, if you're not a fan of true crime, obviously if you're a fan of true crime, go to town on this bad boy. But if you're not, but if it's more than just hold on. Okay. If rather than not being a fan of true crime, if you are averse to it particularly, right? Then don't read this book because it's that part's inescapable. It is a large part of the book. It's going to come up. So if you're just averse to it, I can't. You got to stay away from this one, and it doesn't apply to you. But for everyone else, even casual readers can read this and get some enjoyment. It'll pull you along very well. So, for again, for us reader types, this isn't your. It's not gonna be Shakespeare. It's not gonna be meaty in that sense, but there are moments in it that are a lot meatier than you would almost think on first glance. He has moments in here that are very good, and so it's like it's not let's dip in spots and then raise the bar. It's sort of a solid bar, and then those moments peak it, right? It makes it go up. Very good. It's very, very well written. It's quick. There's we don't have very many large sort of concepts. It's very much its own story about the things that are happening in it. The our Clarice Starling, the FBI hunting a serial killer, dealing with a former serial killer, Hannibal Lecter, right? So it stays right where it needs to be, eye level, let's say, because I think if you went above that eye level too much, right? If you got too out in the weeds with your thoughts, then you would detract because you're pulling the mind away from what's present in front of it, which again is half of the fun of this book. Because you don't have Hannibal the whole time. There's a lot of in between. There's a lot of police investigating that the investigation itself is fun, and then everything starts to get wrapped up into it. Okay, we start with Clarice Starling, right? And I will say it follows most of the beats of the movie. The movie's fine, I guess, if you want to watch the movie instead of read the book. I'd be okay with it. I think you'd be okay with it. You'd also be okay if you read the book and then watched the movie. You'd be okay if you never read the book and watched the movie. You'd be okay if you read the book and never watched the movie. It's a weird. There's not one that's so superior to the other. There's not one. They add different things. So if just in case you're wondering, it's right there, eye level with each other, 50-50, I'd say. Yeah, it's a fun book to read. It's a fun movie to watch. She's in the FBI. She she's attractive and a woman. It's sometime in the 70s and it's in the FBI. So we get a lot of the male to female workplace issues, equality, this kind of thing, but in strong undertones. So again, we're in the woke era. If you're worried about it being it's woke and it bashes you over the head with it, it doesn't. It completely fits the story. You won't it won't bother you at all. It might be interesting to look at sort of a past view of how they might have seen these particular issues, sort of a lens into that. But it doesn't bash you over the head, but it does fully integrate the issue into the story. It becomes part of what you're dealing with. She doesn't, what is it, at one point? She doesn't want to end up a secretary anywhere, even if it's in behavioral science, even though it's a new division, because she knows she'll be typecast as that, and then they'll never let her out into the field to be an actual agent. There's fun there's fun elements with the tech. Again, it's 1976, so like only the FBI has cars with cell phones in them, cellular phones, right? We're having to run to pay phones to do things, this kind of thing. We're asking a lot of questions. We have to um, reference paper files. The tech that the FBI, the big FBI has is some kind of teletype machine that can, through the phone, talk to other people with teletypes. It's this kind of thing. So, you're used to now the modern age and email and cell phones everywhere. But you get taken back in time a little bit. It's a little bit like world building, where you get to feel what it would be like with lives on the line and these limitations in place. Makes it very fun because, again, he didn't then go out of his way to sort of harp on the technology. So when you read it now, it doesn't feel dated. They just live with these things, and because you care about the characters, you live with them for the moment, right along with it. And of course, you rethink. Your mind will go off a little in how it would be different to sort of catch this person now with our tech, and then how he would get away. But none of that ruins the because you're in an investigative mode. None of these sort of police type thoughts ruin your feel of the book at all. It's very fun. His writing, was it Harris? I want to say Thomas Harris. Forgive me for getting your name wrong. I only wrote a bunch of notes, and none of them are the author's name because I'm a genius. He has a very subtle type of writing that works to a great, great effect. Um, he'll pull from moments, right? A stale smell of decay and chemical came out of the car. It jogged her memory in a place she couldn't remember. Right? We've all had where you smell something and it that feeling. We share that feeling, right? Even though we don't share the same exact experience. It's he's pulling on a string we all have. And so he pulls you in a little. He pulls you in a little in a lot of different ways. She was doing the driving now, driving at night. The white dash is passing under. Blip, blip, blip. She had time to think. Again, even if you don't drive yet, let's say, at some point you're gonna be in a car at night, and that you do see these, and you almost hear them. Those dashes on the road just whipping by you, and you're in this sort of a dark shell of a car, and you do end up having time to think. That moment, he's tugging on that moment to personalize the story for you, and it works. Just a little pull out, and you're connected in more ways than you realize. Then he also does what it was not cold enough for their breath to steam. Now, again, it makes me think of when I'm outside and I see my breath coming out. But then it makes me, backtrack. Well, I've been outside. I thought it was cold, but I don't see my breath. I've tested that too, right? Just that little moment, that little human moment that people have. It gives me two, three things at once. It describes, the type of day. Pulls me in as a reader at the same time. He does this a lot throughout the book. And it works. Um, Also, little, what do you call those? I don't know if there is that alliteration? Little poetic type, where even here it goes. She was doing the driving now, driving at night. You put driving to real close together. Just driving, driving. These weird little, a small sentence. He wasn't in a hurry. The cat ran. These kind of, they're small out of the sort of, let's say, the shape of the paragraph. Like the thought of the paragraph, and then just a basic beat on it. Like if you're just hitting a piano, just hit that note one more time. He feeds words in like this that build this great ambiance for you. Again, everything works to personalize this investigation. So in your mind, at some point, a senator's kid gets taken, right, by a serial killer. But your mind doesn't fly off to how the media would deal with this, all the headache of that, right? You're really stuck to these people and their day-to-day lives, moment to moment sometimes, lives, personalizing everything that's happening so that when they're in danger in any way, you start to, your heart starts to pump a little bit. You start to get worried because you don't know exactly how this is going to end up. So we have Clarice Starling, young trainee. We have her boss, Crawford. That's another thing that I like. Again, the human elements in this book. She sees him. She notices sort of he looks a little disheveled. That she had met him before, disheveled. And in another chapter, we just get a small, maybe like a page or two, of him dealing with his dying wife. So then when we come back, we almost have that sympathy, right, for him as a character, but she doesn't have it yet. So she'll still be a little harsh to him, and then we're in this sort of an awkward position where we want her to be nicer to him. Then she learns, and then we see how their relationship adjusts to this information. But it it pulls you into that little social fairly quickly. And again, all these little things pull you into this world, and then we put lives on the line. People could die, right? Because what they're doing, they have and this is the part where, again, if you're squeamish or if you don't like true crime stories, this is the part where you will not enjoy the book because it's the other half. and the other half is dealing with serial killers. Now, like I said earlier, none of these are real. So when they're talking about Buffalo Bill kidnapping girls to, you know, cut their skin off and make a woman suit for himself out of human flesh, that didn't actually ever happen. But there are serial killers who, I think Ed Gein. Again, if you don't like it, don't Google this. I'm not going to put the pictures up. I'll put the person's face up, but I'm not going to use the crime photos. But this gentleman, Ed Gein, he killed people and he took the skins. I think he made a lampshade. Pretty gruesome. That actually happened. And I think the author's been known to say that inspired him, and he grabbed and he used it to make his Buffalo Bill character. This person who's kidnapping girls. So we get our sense of they're looking for these girls. These girls are getting taken. And that's what they do at the FBI. Then they have an idea to go talk to Hannibal Lecter. And this is the draw of the whole book. And he's introduced, again, that subtle, where all these extra precautions are taken. I mean, he's in jail. What can he do? But they go all above and beyond, telling you that he's just like, they say he's Hannibal the cannibal. So like at any point he could eat some part of you if he gets a chance. I mean, they drum it up real good. Now, other books do that, right? Other books can build up some hype, some suspense. What this book does that most of them don't do is he delivers on the character so much, so well. Hannibal. It's she's outside, feet away from him. He's behind bars, behind other bars, right? He's locked up. He can't get to her. But he just exudes this evil, this hyper intelligence. It in my head, because I'm like, he just jumps instantly off the page. It's not many characters that do this. In my mind, Sherlock Holmes does this. Gollum does this. And again, Hannibal does this. These characters are just instantly alive somehow. All the tricks he's using for the rest of the book, he just magnifies for this. A little word here or there. A way to use death, dread, these heavy words around even the things Hannibal says. You get this sense that you instantly get the sense that the man isn't in jail because he doesn't want to be in jail. That it's maybe his choice. That he could get out at any time. You just have that sense about it. And you don't see a way he could. You don't see it. There's all these procedures. There's all this security. But in the back of your head, you feel like, because like all evil, right? We come with the sense that evil can't be contained, right? You fight against evil and you push it off for a while, but you can never extinguish it or really contain it. It always seeps out somehow, and he just exudes this kind of an evil, intellectual power. And we'll spot him in, it's not constantly him. We spot him in spots. And so we have the suspense of the case and these blazing moments with this character. It's so wonderful. He's such a great character. And I will say, as a side note, I think the Anthony Hopkins portrayal of him did an excellent job. I think the Mads Mikkelsen off the TV show portrayal did an excellent job. He's kind of like Sherlock Holmes. He's an evil Sherlock Holmes, where you could read the books and form your own Sherlock Holmes. You could see 15 different actors play Sherlock Holmes. You're like, yeah, I like this one. I like that one. It's kind of like this, I feel like. It's one of these roles that is just, you can refill it with different actors and they can pull something else out of it. He's just so smart. that intelligence. I think at some point, what does it say? He says, "Life's too slippery for books, Clarice. Anger presents as hives." Uh, I didn't get this quote right. I think he says anger presents as hives, and lupus presents as skin irritation or something to this effect, right? Anger, that's easy to deal with. Lupus, that's like scientific. And then it says Dr. Lecter finished sketching his left hand with his right hand, switched the charcoal, and began to sketch his right with his left, and just as well. I mean, it just peppers these things. He can has. It's not like a super hero. It's just he's so hyper aware of his surroundings. He can smell the shampoo you use, and then because he's also a trained psychologist, he can then start piecing together what that means about you. Right? So he'll smell that she has a band-aid on her leg. He his perception, this is the visual. He's reading micro expressions. He knows when you're lying. He knows what you lying about that would mean about what you're feeling. So even through the cage, it's just he seeps into you and just starts attacking. He doesn't even need to touch you. Just starts attacking. At one point, he escapes. Again, these subtle moments. He kills and immobilizes like 2 or 3 cops. And so he has 2 guns. He goes, there's 238 specials. It says this. Even better, in Boyle's pocket, he found a pocket knife. And then I'm like, when you're a criminal and you're in jail and you have 2 guns now, and that in your mind, even better's the pocket knife. I'm like, that's a person in control. He's not gonna. He knows guns blazing isn't the way to get out. But what horrible thing is he gonna do with this pocket knife? It is so personal. It's not big. You got to be really digging. I'm like, oh, he's so good. Um, I like this story. Now there's a prequel called Red Dragon. Now, if I remember right, I read it and didn't like it as much. I don't think there's as much Hannibal in it, and you miss it, right? It's Sherlock Holmes without Sherlock, if I remember right. But some stuff from that book plays in our book here. So we're set down sort of mid walk. So as we're walking, they have past history, Crawford and Hannibal. You know, that past history plays when Hannibal's talking to Starling, Clarice Starling. And a lot of books you feel left out if you don't know all the past history. This one not in any way. Not in any way do you feel left out. If you're inclined, you can go get more, I suppose, but you don't feel left out. That's another thing. It contains itself in its story, even with sort of an outside flow of information. It's very nice. The other half of the book that's not Hannibal, not dealing with Hannibal, which you it's weird to say, but you end up you end up rooting for a serial killer who eats people. And I'm like, that's a hard hill to overcome for a writer, I would suppose. How do you make me root for a person who eats people? But he's so cool. He just kind of, it's something about, I think some part of it is like he's as cool as we kind of want to be. We want to be this intelligent. We want we want to enjoy classical music the way he does, right? He sits in a room and the notes, it says the notes wash over him, and even the bars of his cell, they just act as places for the music to bounce off in interesting ways for him. That when the cops walk in to give him his dinner, they're just voids where the music stops, where there are just these spaces in the music bouncing around because their bodies block it, right? So it's just he just his appreciation of wine, of art, of literature, of classical music is just almost in some way for a lot of people. In your mind, you're like, I wish I enjoyed it as much as he does. So he has these attributes that you almost aspire to, but then he also eats people, and you're like, well, I don't know how he did it, but you kind of root for him. So he wants to give them. He's playing with information. He knows something about Buffalo Bill. They're trying to catch Buffalo Bill, but Crawford doesn't trust him, as you shouldn't. He's a serial killer. So they're running around. He only talks to Clarice. He won't talk to the doctor. He won't talk to the dude there, who's a bit of a dude. The warden, the psych warden, just a douchebag who wants attention. He won't talk to anyone but Clarice, and it never really explains. She's attractive. You get that sense from outside. She doesn't, in her mind or in any inner monologue, think too much, which you don't. People don't walk around thinking of their personal appearance overtly, I would say. But we don't get the sense from him that it's because she's attractive, right? Because his perception's so high. We get the sense that he likes something about her strength, her determination. That's what he sees coming out. He likes her in that sense, like a friend. I don't think like he wants to sleep with her or anything like this, which you get from other men in the book. Again, this great juxtaposition of, men and women normal interactions and then this higher interaction that you could have with this other human, even though this human eats people and is a bad guy. It's just great and it's subtle and it doesn't over lean on it. It just lets you as the reader absorb it. So when he gets out, he escapes. I'm not gonna spoil how he escapes. It's a fun way, and it was fun on a reread, even though I knew it was gonna happen. He escapes, and he's not in a rush at all. He has 100% plan, which you knew he would. You knew he would. He didn't need but half a second, and then he slipped the noose, and he's out. And he just sitting there. He's writing letters. He writes a letter to Crawford. I'm sorry about your wife. He's always a gentleman. He writes a letter to Clarice, almost like a therapist, giving her some tips on how to be better dealing with her personal issues and, what to expect. He says he didn't want to pay her a visit, which is, nice. But then he sends one to, what is it, Chilton, the warden, who was a douche the whole time. And he's like, I will be paying you a visit as soon as I'm done enjoying some of my freedom, even though you're in witness protection. And you're like, ugh. Because you have no doubt. I don't know how. He's just too smart. You have no doubt Hannibal going to find this guy and eat him. And you're like, ugh. But somehow it's you and... I think some of it's the underdog. He has the FBI, all the state police, all the weight of the government against him. And somehow he can get away. Some about the underdog I always root for, even though he's a serial killer who eats people. It's kind of rough. We also get, in a weird way, the juxtaposition. Because he's so classed out of his mind that then we get Buffalo Bill, who's just sort of dirty and uncouth. That you're like, you see, those are the bad serial killers. These are fine. You get this kind of thing. It's just so strange to end up liking a serial killer in a story. But that's how dynamic the character is. Overshadows every other character in the book. And again, none of the actions in and of themselves will blow you away. But in the course, they're really great. Yeah, I'm not going to follow beat by beat. It's a lot of cat and mouse. It's a lot of interesting moments in the Smithsonian, in a science lab. There are conversations where the two officers are just bouncing ideas off each other. There's some real creepy ones where the serial Buffalo Bill, the serial killer, is just debating how he will. He needs to kill the girl. He has her stuck in a pit. He needs to kill her, but he doesn't want to damage any of what he needs. So he decides in the end, in his mind, to shoot her in the legs and then get a clean shot in the head, something like this. The gruesome is gruesome. He doesn't shy away from it, but it's particular. So, what is it contained? There are levels of gruesome, even in real true crime, and some are worse than others. And I'd say this is the more palatable gruesome, if that makes sense. It's the only thing. If you're squeamish about it, or if you just don't like it in general, you won't like this book. But it's a decent book. It's good. And who doesn't like Hannibal? It's absolutely great. Okay, I'm not gonna go on too long because there was all these issues. I'm gonna have to make breaks in this, but that's neither here nor there. Ad time. Um, yeah, these are my books. Do I like this video? I think it's all right. It's not a long book, so I didn't have too much to go in on. There was like 5 characters. What do you want from me? You want a longer book? No. No, it's good. Is my book better than this book? No and yes. I don't have anyone eating anyone, so I got that. I'm gonna take that as a positive. All right, people. I'll see you all next week.